Hello, this is Michael Sulak, and the purpose of this video is to have a quick overview of the easiest format for doing R code, which is using something called RStudio. So the first thing we're going to do is download and install RStudio. So if you just Google it, then the first link you get takes you to RStudio's website, and there's a download link here in the top right. And then you get some scarily expensive versions that we don't need, thankfully. We want the free desktop version, open source, on the left here. So we're going to download that. And then depending on what operating system you're using, I'm using Mac, so I'm going to click this one. And once it's installed, you will run it, obviously. And when you do, you get a screen that looks like this. There are 4 basic partitions in this window here. And the bottom left one is what's known as the console, and that's where you can execute R commands one line at a time. If you're not familiar with R, it's basically a computer programming language where you type in things and the computer follows those instructions, and you have to be pretty perfect on what you're telling it to do. If even one character is off, then your code won't run. So you just have to pay pretty careful attention as to what you're doing. So at a most basic level, R can do some math, like say adding 2 numbers together. So I can type those in with a plus sign between them. And when you're in the console and you hit enter, you execute that command. And so this next line here with the 1 in front of it, that's just telling me this is the first line of output. And then it shows me the result of whatever I executed. So R can do basic things like adding numbers. It can do other math. It can do quite a lot. And the console is the quickest way to execute lines of code in R. If you're working on something like homework, there's a very good chance that what you'd like to do is be sure that you save whatever you're working on so you can use it later. So in that case, it might be better, instead of typing in commands one line at a time in the console, for you to go to this top left box. What we're going to use this for is saving our code in what's known as an R script. So I can type in a few lines of code here that I might want to run later. Let's add some numbers. And you'll notice when I hit enter here, I just go to the next line. R can find the square root of a number using a function called sqrt. So here I have 2 lines of code that I've written, and if I want to actually run those lines of code, I can put my blinking cursor on that line and hit the run button, and that will run 1 line at a time. So I have to hit it twice if I want to run both these lines. If I had a bunch of code that I wanted to run all at the same time, I could highlight it and click run. You can run lines of code by going up to the code menu item, and you'll notice you can run different parts. A very useful one is this run all. On a Mac here, it's giving me the shortcut associated with that as well. I could do option command and R to run every single line of code. So again, this is the console where we can run lines of code one at a time. This is a script. Well, actually it's nothing right now. It's just some lines of code sort of as a sitting here in a text file. But if I go to file and I go to save as, and I'm going to call it my R script, and I save it. So now I notice that I've got a name on this tab here that I've saved this code as a .r file, which is the extension for an R script. And if I want to say quit R, why would you ever want to do that? Then come back, you'll see that the code that I ran earlier in the console is gone, but my script is still here. And even if it wasn't, I could load it by file and open file and find my script, and now it's back. And so now you'll notice there are these 2 other windows. What are those for? Well, the bottom right one is the easiest one to explain. If you want to make a plot in R, which R is very useful for, it's great for making visual displays of data. One of them, say, is a histogram. and I'm just going to make a histogram of 100 values randomly drawn from a normal distribution. And when I run that, you'll see that I get my display in the bottom right here. And if I made another one, maybe with a different color, I'm going to color this one green, then I can switch back and forth between those plots with these arrows here. Another really useful thing that the bottom right hand window is for is accessing R's help files. And help files in R you get by using a question mark and then the name of what you would like to find the help for. So for example, I've just found the help file for the histogram function hist, and there's a lot going on here, but if I scroll down, say within this arguments section, it tells me that COL for color is for choosing a color that can be used to fill the bars in the histogram, which is why when I did col equals green, they turned into green bars. If you wanted to figure out how to say make some sort of adjustment like, oh, the border, instead of having the inside green, I want the lines around the bars be green. Border is the argument you use for that. So I could say maybe it's a little easier if I just copy and paste this, and then I change that to border, and I run that, and I get the histogram with green lines around the bars. That's the help file, and obviously using Google to get help in R is a great way. The help files are nice just because they're right here. You might like them, you might not. A useful section of the help file especially is at the end here. They give you examples of different things that will be runnable code. So they're giving you correct ways to use whatever you've just searched for. So sometimes it's just nice to see how do you use this. And there's a lot of examples down here. Then the final part is the top right, where you will see any data sets or things that you've created in R. Say for example, this little bit of code here, this rnorm100. What that does is create 100 data values, and if I just run that, I see all the data values. Holy moly, there they are. A thing that gets used a lot in R is that you can create what's called an object and give it a name. I'm going to call this my data, and you can assign that object a value. So what this line of code here is saying, okay, take those 100 random data values and assign them. The assignment operator that's best to use is creating this symbol with the leftward facing arrow and then a hyphen, and then whatever name you want. So I'm going to call this my data, and when I run this, what you'll notice is that in the top right, it's saying, okay, you now have something called my data. There's 100 things, there are 100 numbers, and here's some of them. So this is a useful way to inspect something you've created. And this OP here was created by whatever I ran from the help file, and maybe I don't want that to be there. So I could remove it by typing in RM and OP, and now it's gone. So that's a very quick rundown of RStudio. There's 4 different windows here that you can adjust actually by grabbing these if you'd like them to be bigger or smaller. This is the console for typing in individual commands. This is a window where you could make an R script. You could also make different sorts of files to use in here. For example, you could make an R markdown file, which is a way to combine R code and text, which is really useful if you're making a report or homework or something like that. There is the environment for you to look at things that you've created, and then there's the bottom right-hand window where you can view plots. You can view help documentation in R as well. I hope that was somewhat helpful. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to let me know. This is Michael Sulak, and I will see you next time.